Hello and welcome to part two of our conversation with Todd Greenwood. Todd and me were talking how he is like a deep ocean on everything communication. So, one episode would not have done justice to what his experience brings to us at the club. In this part of our conversation with Todd Greenwood, we're going to talk about the Young Leaders program that he initiated years back, which has become a movement today. Todd, welcome again to part two of our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Ritu. Yes, no, it's a pleasure again to speak with you, of course, and to talk about the youth leadership program. It certainly has been an important part of what I've been doing with Toastmasters for the last 25 years.
Yes. So before we deep dive into the Young Leaders program, could you, for our viewers, explain what the Young Leadership program looks like, what
Sure.
it is?
Yeah, and it's just to clarify, it's called the Youth Leadership Program. It is actually, at least it used to be something that was considered part a of what Toastmasters International offered. So there was at one point a youth leadership manual that you could buy that was designed, of course, to help to support young people in their leadership and communication skills. We know that in so many schools around this country and around the world, the ability to communicate orally is one of the key skills that is taught in schools. In fact, I have friends who are do that and their kids are in classes, and one of the things they need to do is to give oral presentations, and it terrifies those kids. And I remember it used to terrify me when I was a kid as well. So, uh, recognizing that Toastmasters International, youth leadership programs, and uh, back in, my goodness, the year 2005, the then president of this club of Princeton Toastmasters, Ashok Rathod, and myself, became fast friends. And Ashok said to me, "Hey, Todd, you have young kids. I have young kids. Why don't we go ahead and put together our own youth leadership program?" And so we took the basic structures of the youth leadership manual, which frankly was a fairly thin and manual with a lot of flexibility to go in any way you wanted to go. And we created our own youth leadership program for Princeton Toastmasters. We started in Ashok's basement, and very quickly we had maybe 20 young children, his kids, my young kids, other people who were in Toastmasters, eh, and not just the Princeton Toastmasters Club, but other clubs in Mercer County as well, all word of mouth. I think the next week we moved to yet another basement in West Windsor, New Jersey. It was an instant success. Instant success in as much as, those kids wanted to be there. They were anxious to come back. And after maybe 8 sessions, I think we did it. Immediately, the question was, when are the next ones? When do we do this again? And each time we did, the number of kids grew. Pretty soon, we had not just one class of kids, but two and three divided by age. Soon we were utilizing the libraries in West Windsor and the libraries in Plainsboro and pretty much any place that we could get our hands on. And the process, the club, the youth leadership program just kept on growing and growing. Soon it was 50 kids, and soon we needed to then make a change. Ashok wanted to move away, work on his own personal projects. So I took the club and brought it to ETS, and of course, the Educational Testing Services. in Princeton, has a enormous campus, a beautiful campus, and I had the wonderful honor and pleasure of working for many years with Gene Shippos, who's now left us. But Gene was not only a DTM, not only, but also was on that stage, on that international stage for World Speaking. She was one of the final contestants on stage. She's someone who is respected, remembered, and missed by a lot of Toastmasters. Jean was so kind and so giving and really was able to find a place within the ETS institution to really help grow and harden and mature what we were doing, what Ashok and I did. Pretty soon, we again, numbers speak volumes. So pretty soon we were north of 100 kids, north of 150 kids. Pretty soon there was more than 200 kids. The program has continued and it continues to this day.
Thank you for sharing that, Todd. In fact, I have been associated with the Youth Leadership Program as well as a mentor, and this year I'm in the working committee. And what surprises me is that it's 300 plus kids. It's run on 100 volunteers, 100 plus volunteers who selflessly volunteer their time for 3 months every weekend, 2 to 3 hours to come to a school where these sessions are being held and really make this program what it is today. I think you sowed a sapling and you nurtured it to a point from your journey. That's what I'm understanding about it. I think that was incredible thought what you started. But I think personally, it has taken the form of a whole movement today. And the reason I call it the movement is it could still be 100, 150 kids. The fact that people get so much out of the program, that kids, it keeps growing every year. 300 students is not a small number by any chance. You need a larger space. You need mentors to be able to make the program effective. And the way you have designed the program is awesome because there is an entire graduation ceremony at the end of all the hard work that the kids put in, and it's no less than any high school's graduation ceremony that I have personally seen. It's with all the bells and whistles and students taking the stage and running the program and speeches and awards, almost an Oscar kind of experience last year when I was there. So
Yes,
so so
it's
yeah, it's
tremendous. I mean, I think the first year we started, we gave out awards, um, and we quickly realized how important it was to to do that, to really acknowledge the kids. But then pretty soon after that, we said, this is something where, this final presentation day, this graduation, we need to work on this. We need to make this something that is not just for the kids, but for the parents themselves, for the parents, so that the parents can see really what an enormous benefit the program is. Um, so that was something we instituted pretty quickly. But to Gene's credit and to the credit of so many people, I mean, that really that concept matured. How can we actually bring excellence onto that stage for that graduation event? And how can we really showcase the enormous, not only talent, but just the enormous dedication that these kids have put into, into the past number of months. And it's for anyone who has not had the experience of being part of this, there's so many opportunities, just from, working with the little ones, which are just the little kids are are remarkable and they're adorable and they're so passionate. I can remember my own son Gabriel when he was 5 years old, and came into the program and he just was like, oh, I'm so excited for Toastmasters, and just like almost like shaking out of his body with excitement, you know. But then, the opportunity to stand up on stage and to just to tell a story or to do a table topics. I mean, the kids are just remarkable when they do this. And again, it's transformational, especially at these kind of critical ages before adolescence, where the idea of embarrassment hasn't set in to this sort of rigidity
Yes.
that takes over for adolescence. Um, you know, a 9, 10-year-old kid who's talking about something that he feels passionate about or she feels passionate about, or showing about something they've learned, or presenting a dance, or demonstrating something. That it's so beautiful. It's so remarkable. That was one of the things that we started almost from the very beginning, was the idea that one of the speeches should be a demonstration speech. Show us something that you've learned. Teach us something. And I think to this day, I mean, that's one of the kind of key speeches that the kids do. Uh, and it brings so much interest into that room.
For the purpose of our viewers, can you share what's the construct of the program? And the reason I ask is because this program is extensive. It runs from kids as young as from class one to the high schoolers,
Yeah.
the seniors. How is the program structured and divided into groups? That's
Mm.
first question. Second is, what do kids do when they come every weekend on a Saturday for 2 hours? Because program is short. If I really look at it, it's 11 or 12 Saturdays, and we pack in a lot. So, what is about the curriculum or the way it's laid out that it becomes like sort of this fully done program in such a short span of time? Can you take us through that?
Certainly, yeah. There's a couple of, in order to have this run fairly seamlessly every year, there are some structures that are involved. Part of it is that even though we typically start in the second week of January, a lot of the work is starting back in October. Or even prior to that, really getting the involvement of, as you said, 100 adults who are there in a mentorship role. And I think that really the first thing about the structure is that, just like adult Toastmasters, with the youth leadership program, the idea is that the kids, to the best of their ability, and this is basically true of those who are grade 3 and above, are there to uh, to kind of model for the others. I wouldn't even say teach to the others, but model for the others. Um, and the role of the mentor is to create sort of the structure for that to happen. Now, so what you won't see in a youth leadership program is a typical teacher student kind of engagement. You're not going to see the adult standing in front and say, okay, now let me teach you how to do a speech. Instead, is the idea of, we're going to do a speech. And, there may be some, depending upon the mentor, there may be an opportunity after a speech for giving specific feedback to that student about things that they could do better next time. But a lot of times also, that whole evaluation portion may be done by the students as well. Again, it depends upon the ages. You asked about how do we divide up the classes? First of all, I don't think we have kindergartners, but we definitely have first graders, second graders, and third graders. And those, um, Rob Jones, for my goodness, I mean, 20 plus years he's been running this, has those youngsters together, and he will then put them into small groups. So I think it's small groups of 4, maybe 5 or 6, but it's small groups, like essentially pods of those kids who are that young. And then they're getting much more sort of hands-on support from the mentors. Typically, their focus is doing just the initial speaking and working together on a little group speech that they can present at the end. So that's a lot of fun just to see these little kids kind of come together and to do a little group speech, and each one of them takes a little role in that speech. But just that whole question of like, what are we going to talk about? How are we going to make this work? And then it's all of the elements of speaking that we all know so well. It's about projection. It's about controlling your body. I mean, when you're 7 years old, just sort of standing there and speaking is just a quite a task in itself. After, I think it's the fourth grade, the fifth, yes, fourth grade and above, we are then organizing the kids by grade. At one point, there were some mixed grades, but we find it actually pretty works much better if the kids are pretty much the same age, pretty much of the same grade, mixed boys and girls together. We've never done it where we're exclusive by gender, and and that continues up until high school, and we have all of the high schoolers together in one group, and that's been led ably by Jack Levitt for, again, so many years, where he's had those high schoolers together. And there are different expectations that you want to provide when you're doing this to high schoolers, not only in terms of topics, but just the higher level, higher standard of dealing with filler words and dealing with the so's and dealing with all of the typical ways that teenagers are talking over the years, and it's changed. It's changed over the years, but certainly the need to have a higher standard is certainly hasn't changed. And then there's also an advanced group. I was for a number of years the leader of the advanced group. The advanced group is essentially a select group of students who have typically been with Toastmasters for 3, 4, 5 years, some kids 7 years. They just are dedicated to be, a part of the Toastmasters program, and they're really looking to incorporate advanced speaking skills into what they're doing. So that's the general organization. Classes, typically 20 students per class, 15 students per class, depending. One of the things that is the limiting factor there is we have an expectation that kids will deliver 3 speeches over the course of the program. And so there's just a throughput, the number of speeches that can be
Right.
done in a 2-hour period. The other part of it that's, again, reminiscent or completely based upon the adult program is it's not just about communication, but it's also about leadership. So the very first week that the kids are together, what they're doing is they're coming up with their club name, typically something about toast, burnt toast, toast and bread, a nice creative name. And then they're also picking their leaders. They're picking who it is that is going to be the president, who's the VP, who's going to be the secretary. Certain clubs even have high schoolers for years had a treasurer who used to collect, I think, a dime or 25 cents, depending on anyone who used a filler word. And at the end of the year, there was a pizza party. So
Okay. That's a good concept.
it's a very good concept, although it sort of works. It might work the wrong way. It's like too many fillers, and I want more pizza. But
Right.
anyway, that's leadership is an extremely important part of this as well. And once again, these kids take that very, very seriously. They come up week one with typically their leadership pitch, why I should be the president. But it's all done with a lot of fun and a lot of love. If there's an absolute thing that the mentors do, it's to maintain the space the space of respect within that room. You have kids who come from so many different backgrounds, kids who have so many different experiences, and the the necessity to ensure that these kids feel comfortable with one another is probably the most critical thing that those mentors can do. Um, but the beautiful thing that happens is that, you know, in almost all of the cases, and I can't say it's 100%, but in almost all of the cases, after just a number of weeks, these kids feel so comfortable with each other. They do want to be with one another. They do really find, um, well, friendship in that
Right,
class, and
right.
the idea of kind of shared meaning. And I, again, having been, I've played a part pretty much all of the ages, but I've also been in classes with students who are advanced students and who really is sharing some pretty sensitive things about themselves, about their lives, uh, talking in ways about who they are in very sophisticated ways. So going beyond the, I'm going to tell my story of my trip to Disneyland for sure. But you get a lot of, I want to tell you about my trip to Disneyland, and that's necessary too. So the content can be really, I think, moving is the word. And I've found myself just, moved by the bravery of the students, and I think that that's appreciated by their peers as well.
Well, that's so nice, the journey that you're talking about on how kids go through the program. It doesn't have one aspect to it, which is just communication. It is not your typical school teacher and coach kind of environment. It's also about leadership. And I think those are the things that create transformation, because communication, you and me were discussing in the last podcast, communication is a lot about how we think about ourselves and the world around us. And I think leadership becomes an important part because you start seeing yourself differently. That was a point brought forward by you, Todd. And I think sowing those seeds early of how kids see themselves, how kids take responsibility, and how that starts shaping their leadership and communication, which go hand in hand. And you pretty much require communication for leadership anywhere in life. You require it in your high school, you require it in your interviews. It's a skill that everybody needs to learn, but communication cannot be learned in isolation, just as communication. So I think I like the way that you've stitched the program together around those things. Tell me something about the transformation that you see. You've been associated with this program for a long time. I have a personal story to share, but that
Oh,
later,
I want to
because I,
hear.
I have been to the program for a very short while, but I was very moved by what happens there. Tell me about the transformation you see in the kids. Somebody coming into
Oh,
the program and leaving the program in that particular year, and the kids who've stayed there for 5, 6, or 7 years. Would love to hear those stories from you.
yeah, it's interesting. There's the transformation is very individual, but on the other hand, it's not untypical that we see kids who come in year one, with holding on to daddy's hand, unsure as to why daddy is taking me here, a little excited, but just like very unsure about the experience. And within a number of sessions, they're running down the hall wanting to get to their class and they're very excited. And, you know, they'll start with nervousness and start really uncertain about what this is all about, but pretty soon just so excited to actually give a speech, to get up and to give a table topics. And it's so funny because in adult clubs, when it's time for the table topics, everyone is like looking down at suddenly their lap becomes the most interesting thing in the world. Table topic is like, oh, let me just check my shoes for a second. No, with the kids though, it's table topics time, and these kids have their hands up like, woo, me,
Oh my God,
me,
really?
Mickey, Mickey,
Okay.
me. And
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it's a completely different. Again, I haven't been in every single class, but I definitely have seen that these kids are anxious to get up there and to tell a table topics story. And I said story because they're table topic stories. And what else? Just a, uh, I think again, just from a sense of who they are, just more self-possessed. And I've seen that with kids who it's like, what, is that the same kid? You know, last year she just seemed so nervous, and then she comes up on stage and she seems like a young lady. She seems like someone who really has a sense of herself up there. And there's in some ways there are no words for that. It's just like it's like who that person exudes on stage. And you know, we know that that exists for us in the adult club, but when you see it in kids,
Yeah.
that is just tremendous. That is just tremendous. Like I am doing something here with these kids that will last a lifetime. And I have to say that some of my proudest moments is kids coming up to me and saying, I'm applying for college, or kids who've talked about their job interviews, their first job interviews in life, and really attributing so much of their success to the confidence that they gained through the program. And it really is transformational. And I don't have to look any further than my own son, Gabriel, who is a performer. And, he was a nervous little kid who was socially, had a lot of social anxiety when he first started. He really didn't have the social skills to sort of connect with people. Um, he loved Toastmasters. He loved it. He was not very good at preparing his speeches, but he still loved it. And I think he credits the youth leadership program as being the thing that allowed him, gave him sort of the push to go into the music business. And every day, I mean, it's like looking at the clock because I think that there's somewhere right now in the Caribbean that he is entertaining hundreds of people. And,
Wow.
it's every day he's there and he is putting himself out into the world in a way that, you know, kind of pushes himself a little further to be totally himself. We were talking about that yesterday on WhatsApp, just like, you know, sort of like who are you? Who's your brand as a musician? And part of that is that just that ability to sort of see yourself, you know, who are you in this world? That that
Right.
is that starts with that starts with being up on stage.
Yes. No, that's a beautiful way you have captured that story of the transformation that happens. Like I said, I have spent little time with the youth leadership program, and I can certainly see that transformation happening at a very young age. In fact, I volunteered as a mentor for Rob's class, which was kids who were as young as 7 years old to 9 years old. And I'd like to share a little story here.
Please.
You and me have talked
Yeah.
about it, but the first time I came there as a mentor, and I walked in there as a mentor because they were running short of mentors, and therefore I came to as a mentor for very young kids. Had it been on my own, maybe I would have said I would mentor slightly older kids because it's not an experience I've had. So I walked in like a nervous mentor thinking, how can you mentor 7 year olds to stand on stage and give a speech? And many of them were not even interested in that, like in the first class, because they're over ambitious parents, they might have thought in their heads, would have put them there on a cold Saturday morning when they could have slept a little bit more or played in their homes. So that was the feeling when I walked in. And like you rightly said, that young group is divided into 5 or 6 kids, and I was mentoring one small group. And the amazing thing was that these kids did not know each other. So
Mhm.
they were, and they at that point they did not even want to know each other. They were there in the morning. It was a new place. And all they did was they wanted to run around and play. We were in a library at a school, I remember. And all they did was they were just running around. So it was a very difficult task to first of them have them sit together and then think of something where we will start on our project. So that was my first experience. And the second experience was that there was a kid in that group, a boy, who absolutely did not want to do anything with communication or speech. He made it clear to me in the first class itself. And even when I was able to get the little group together after a while, certainly I learned and grew as a mentor too in that process. He still was somebody who would not sit at the table with the group and he would keep running around. But what I saw through that program was that, you cannot be instructional in communication. It's very organic. And anyway, that was not my plan, but I learned because I mentored such a young group. They came together because we started playing games, and the fun was an interesting part for them. And then they had to select a topic for their speech jointly. And the speech was around fun because they were having so much fun with each other, with playing the game. And they were looking forward after 2 weeks to come to this place and hang out together. So the whole group cohesiveness started forming a little over time. Like you said, happens in older age groups as well. And this little boy who was not interested started seeing that something is forming out there, something is cooking. And now, maybe he could see the shape and form it was taking. So he started participating. And I gave him like dialogues and parts of speech to do, which he was passionate about, where he had contributed. But he still came up to me one day and said, what is the point of doing all this? I said, because you have a class contest and you can win. He says, but I never win. And
Ah,
I don't think there's a point in doing it. And I told him that, do you like playing sports? Which he said, yes. And I said, why do you play a sport if you don't win? He said, because it's fun. It was a nugget of insight for me on, I think a bigger role here is why people do what they do, how to inspire people to do something. And maybe he was too young to be in that class or too young to understand that the sapling of communication, if it's grown so young, can make him or her such a strong speaker in 7 or 8 or 10 years' time. But here's the twist to the story. I'm not going to, stretch it longer. Our group won 2 rounds of competition, and each kid was supposed to say speak about a part of the speech. So it was a joint collaborative activity. They had to learn their lines. My God, such young kids. I remember when I was that young, I hadn't attempted something like that. So really, really very proud of them all. And they won the first round, and there was a twinkle in his eyes. And then they won the second round because it keeps getting like,
uh-huh.
the lesser groups that are selected. And then they went on to the main stage on the graduation day to give that speech that they had together practiced. And all of them, I remember, were nervous. We were putting the speakers on them, the mics and all
Nice,
that.
yeah.
They were nervous, but they were excited. And they went up on a big stage with like some 300 parents sitting, all of them first time. They give such a spectacular performance. And after the performance, that boy came and hugged me and said, we won, we won, we won. And you know what I was thinking? This program is giving that dose of confidence and positivity and belief to these kids. And to me, that is a moment I'm never going to forget. And that's the power of the program, Todd, you have created. I really wanted to
It's
share
a
this
what
story
a
with you.
beautiful story. What a beautiful story. And yes, it absolutely exemplifies sort of what happens in the program, and it happens for, well, I don't know what the repeat rate is over year, but I must tell you that, when you meet people those children who've been with the program for 5, 6, 7 years, and they really grow through that program. And you know, young in the advanced program, kids who have turned to me and say, can't believe, I mean, this has spent half of my life in the youth leadership program and how much it's really meant to me. And now I'm going off to college. So, it is something that is not just about a moment. It really is about sort of really creating confidence and creating skills and creating friendships. I think that that's the other thing. I mean, you see, you know, especially young girls who, and boys who just, find friends and even go back to their school and are able to, I think, participate in a new way in their school thanks to the program. So it has so many benefits. It really does.
Yeah, yeah. It's been wonderful talking to you, Todd, about the youth leadership program. I'm sure more and more people over the years and more kids, more parents who know about it can benefit tremendously. It's something that you've created which has already become an institution, and I see it continuing for 100 years. Like we recently celebrated 100 years of Toastmasters. It's right that poster behind me. I think someday this youth leadership program is going to do that 100 years and be as strong and keep doing the service to the society that it does. And it all started with one small basement that you talked about and one thought,
Thank you.
but
And
somebody who, yeah.
I would say to anyone who's listening beyond the borders of Mercer County, where this program is situated, um, there's so many opportunities in your own community to do the same, to really repeat this and as you said, Rita, I mean, it really does center on fun. If fun is not one of the keywords in the vocabulary around this, then it won't work. But when fun is included, um, and when fun is combined with respect, you know, this is, this wins really around the whole world. And honestly, this is what we need in this world is the ability for people to communicate and communicate with respect.
Yes, yes, thank you. And for our viewers listening in, on the Youth Leadership Program, there's an award for the working committee every year. It's called Todd Greenwood Leadership Award. And that's the legacy that Todd is leaving behind in the communication community. And I'm sure you'll continue to do the good work with the storytelling workshops you have and all sorts of things that you're passionate about. We are very fortunate to have people like you in Toastmasters continuing to do such good work for the society.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Todd.
Thank you again for the true pleasure and honor to be able to participate in this podcast.
Thank you, Todd. And with that, we'll sign off for today. Thank you so much for being in our show.